Today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism in Civilization: A New Dawn. This is the new Civilization game from Fantasy Flight, and I got to play it for the first time at Geekway Mini thanks to a helpful person named Benjamin who taught the game to me and a few other people. The mechanism I'm going to talk about in this game has been talked about by reviewers. I'm not a reviewer, I'm just here to talk about game design. But it really is the best mechanism, in my opinion, in the game. And so I think it's worth discussing, and I think it would be great if this mechanism showed up in other games. Basically, it's a component that translates into a lot of cool mechanisms. It's a long, thin tile with 5 different slots on it, numbered 1 to 5, left to right, and each of those numbers has a different terrain type, 5 different terrain types associated with it. Players have 5 different actions that they can take on their turn. You choose one. They're each represented by a card with usually a bunch of text on it, but they're right in front of you, so it's really easy to read. And these cards are put out in order associated with each of the 5 slots of this horizontal bar. So you end up with this bar with 5 cards under it, and you choose one of those cards. Now, just inherently, I really like this action selection mechanism. As you know, if you've watched this series, I love clever action selection mechanisms, and this one really exceeds in that. It takes a lot of complexity and it boils it down to 5 actions on your turn. So you can easily look at these 5 different actions that you get to choose from, and the text tells you exactly how they work. But this tile, so that you could accomplish that without the tile, but by adding the tile with these different numbers on it and these different terrains, it creates a lot of interesting possibilities here. So when you choose an action, you choose one of those cards and you take the action on the card, but most of the cards, I think all of the cards, have an ability that correlates to the current slot that it's on. So for example, there's one that can help you advance your technology. You have like a little dial that shows how far your technology has advanced. And you get to turn that dial a number of times equal to the slot where the card is located, where the technology advancement card, whatever it's called, is located. I'm forgetting what it's called. So if the card is all the way in slot 5, you get to advance that dial 5 times in a single action. Whereas if it's all the way back on slot 1, you only advance it once. So I like that you have the freedom to choose from all these actions. But you only get the power. The more powerful they are, the better they are, obviously. So, and you might be thinking, well, why wouldn't I just choose that action every time if I'm getting 5 advances on the technology dial? And the reason is when you choose that action, you pick up the card, you move all the other cards over, and you slot in that card at slot number 1. So every time you take an action, even if it's a super powerful action, it becomes the least powerful action on your next turn. The other thing is the terrain. They use kind of an accessibility of terrain. So like mountains are the most valuable, hardest to get to terrain. Then there's deserts and forests, and I think plains is next. And so if you need to interact with a terrain that's more difficult to interact with, like a mountain, you need to wait until a card gets up to the mountain slot, which is on the 5 slot. And there's some of the action cards that you can take correlate directly to those terrain types. Let me see if I have some images up on my computer screen now. I don't see an example right now of that. But I really like the simplicity of this action selection system and how it correlates, how these cards change in value depending on how long you wait to actually use them. And I love when I'm learning a game, I like when a game tells me or gives me some things to do when I don't really understand all the interactions in the game. So for my first maybe 10 turns of the game, I always took a 4 or 5 value action just because it was so powerful. It felt good to take a powerful action, and I maybe wasn't the deepest strategy in the game to choose the timing of certain cards, but it was never a bad thing. I was participating. I was actively involved in my first game, even though I was new, thanks to this action system that pointed me towards certain cards, certain abilities. It also provides a nice testing ground for you to try each ability once. If you just cycle through the cards and try each ability on the 5 level, then you get to learn those abilities as you play, which I really like. So many cool things about this action selection mechanism, and I would love to see it in other games. I think this is a mechanism that really could translate very well to a game. If you have a game that currently has an action checklist, instead of using that checklist, put those actions on cards and put them under one of these tiles, and I think it would work, or it has the potential to work really, really well. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this action selection system, Civilization: A New Dawn in general, or your favorite mechanism in a Civilization game. I'm designing one right now myself, so I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about your favorite mechanism in a Civilization game. Thanks!